Good evening. This is John Flannery, and it's rained all day and it was too soggy out, so I ran indoors. But I wanted to talk about a few things that are going on and thoughts I've had. My Jefferson report would be, although we're high and dry here, that it was raining all day outside. I did get a picture when I tried to brace myself against the elements, but it wasn't going to work. So the talking heads today sort of went over the same subject matter. And I have to say that I think the White House is shaving points off whatever they're really thinking. And it's annoying, but that's the way it is. I don't know if you've ever seen a painting by Picasso called Guernica. He made it in 1937. And I think I first saw it at the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan. It's gray and black and white, and they're non-representational figures, and it's an effort which I think succeeds to capture the violence and chaos that he saw in Spain. It contains a gored horse, a bull, screaming women, a dead baby, a dismembered soldier, and flames, the fire of chaos and war. The struggle that Picasso was painting for involved the Nazis and the fascists bombing Guernica at the request of the Spanish nationals. Now, obviously, the parallels are there, but I think they're there for every time we have one of these conflicts. I was at Barcelona in 1969 or 70, and I stayed at a nice hotel on the Ramblas, that is where people walk. And in my best Spanish, which is barely understandable, I asked the concierge if there was a good place for me to run. And I had hoped to run up Mount Tibidabo. Somebody will have to correct me. It's a gorgeous mountain, and you can see the waters when you reach the top, and it's pretty steep, so you get a really good workout, and it was warm out, so when I did finally do it, it was a marvelous experience. But the concierge said to me, "Oh, you want to run?" And and everybody was laughing as he said to him. He said, "At night, you can run out here on the Ramblas." I had no idea what he was talking about. That evening, in the semi-darkness, the light coming from the shops and some street lamps, I saw a guy pull his arm back like this, and then I saw him move it that way. I couldn't see what, if anything, was in his hand, but then I could see the arc of the object, and what he was doing was throwing a firebomb at a car, and it went underneath the car, and it pretty much was enveloped in fire. Thus the chaos begins. Now, the guy, after he threw it, he started running at an angle toward where I was standing on the other side of the street. So I immediately turned and ran, and I jumped into a hallway, and I slid on the floor. And when I got up, the guy was lying on the ground, and they said they shot him with rubber bullets, and there were several shootings. And so that's what they were talking about when they said I could go running on the Ramblas at night. And that evening at the restaurants, you would see armed soldiers come into the different shops. So I've seen up close the chaos. Now, I was a student at Columbia, and at Columbia in 1968, we had what some described as a student riot rather than a protest. But it was pretty serious, and it took over the entire university, and people were not going to classes, and they were sitting in the buildings, and there were marriages in the buildings. People lived in the buildings. And the protest was against the involvement of Columbia by its faculty and funding and preeminence in America helping the war. And there were denials about that, and some students occupied the main building. And there was chaos again. And a good friend of mine who had been my lab partner in high school and in college, brilliant guy, he and I were at Columbia together because we went from Fordham to Columbia on a special 3-2 program. You get 2 degrees, one in pure science, physics, and the other in engineering. So we didn't do lab together, but we were both active. And one day he said, they're having a meeting to talk about what's going on. So I went with him, and he had a petition. And I said, you should get up and read that. You know, I was talking about being level-headed and, you know, trying to figure out and meet and talk and so forth. And he said, no, you read it. You do that kind of thing. So I got up and I read it. And the next thing I knew is they had cameras on me. And I think there was supposed to be somebody else who was to garner support from standing there where I was standing. But they made me the head of a group. And then I was interviewed repeatedly. And then pretty soon I was ignored. But I was recruited after the riots to restructure the university and understand what happened and to see what we could do in the future. And among other things, besides a report, we wrote a university Senate resolution so that everybody would be represented going forward. So there it is. The key to chaos is sometimes organizing. And the young professors I got to know were prominent in the law school, which I didn't appreciate at the time. And so I got to work with them while I was at Columbia Law School. And that, for me, was a richer experience in law school because I just thought of the law as a trade school, frankly. And what I got outside the classroom from the professors and the assignments I could get and the writing I did and stuff like that. But I learned a great deal from those incidents. That is, how you can find order out of chaos. And there has to be some agreed set of rules, and it probably means some compromise. And it means not expecting to get 100% of what you want, particularly if the outcome is a violent one. Now, some of these things probably sound with you as in the crises we have halfway around the world, and we have right here at home with the archangel of disaster, the self-appointed savior of America, the failed casino operator and crooked realtor, Donald Trump. And he seems to be even worse now. And so I see in him the foothills of violence and chaos and disaster. Not like Guernica, but the kind of quiet chaos that then leads to violence if you don't get your way. And Trump is organizing to be able to do that at the election itself or afterwards. Just take it by force. My lifetime, and perhaps yours, depending upon how long in the tooth you may be, is you've seen Nixon cheating in an election. You've seen Reagan have his own war, the Iran-Contra war, and that the first Bush, the elder Bush, was involved in that. Then we had W take us into a war that wasn't necessary, and now we have Trump. We have managed to get back to these things, but not without a penalty. That is to say, compromising the promise that was America, which was to be a republic represented by the people, a democracy. And we have inched toward that all along. I was encouraged on this day of the talking heads on Sunday that the alarm seems to go out. But the trouble is, those who do talk about it, like The Atlantic has an article about what could possibly go wrong with Trump. The others are saying that as well. Some Republicans, they have the party line, which is why we cannot vote for them now. I'm not saying for all time, obviously, but right now they don't believe in the republic or democracy, or that we're all in this together. They don't believe in equality. They don't believe that we're all equal under the law. And they would deprive so many of the rights, whether it be voting or having a child or not having a child, and what do we do for our senior citizens, and the list goes on and on. Our republic has survived each challenged opportunity before, not by mimicking Rip Van Garland, who sits in the office that Bobby Kennedy once sat. And I've been to that office, and because of my devotion, I felt strongly about the history that it evoked to me. I can't imagine a bigger insult than Garland is in that office. I was in that office with some other attorney generals, and that I felt comfortable that they were trying, that they were going to try to take on the monsters that can cause chaos and violence, figure out how to work through the civil rights problem that was, if nothing else, about inequality, about discrimination. And that's something some of you may have seen, because as a kid I remember seeing hoses turned on persons of color in the South. And I was young enough that I found it shocking and out of line with what I understood to be what America was all about. So what can we do? You and I have talked about this before. Voting, obviously. Mailing to appropriate people. Giving what you can. Running for office, if you feel that strongly about it. And this is how people find their way into politics. Letters to the editor. Don't have to be elaborate, just make your point. Editorials, maybe a little more ambitious, maybe with somebody else. And through all this, what is the touchstone of what we're looking for? I think it is what Moshe Dayan once said. Freedom is the oxygen of the soul. Without freedom, we're soulless. And we are confronting a movement that is not about freedom. It's about restriction. It's about dominion. It's about suppression. It's about fiat. It's against representation. It's against equality. And so, if we want what Diane believed was freedom, and we want to have a soulful life, then we can't tolerate Trump. When people just grab their rosary beads and fail to act, they're soulless. Even those who we consider our friends. It's not enough to say, but it would help if you did say it clearly, whether you're a judge or a juror, a person on the street, an elected official, wherever you are. The trick of keeping this country, keeping the republic, as Benjamin Franklin said, is that we have to give what measure of contribution we can to this republic. That's where we stand. So I thought I'd give a few remarks. I hope you find it interesting. Think about it. And tomorrow, if it doesn't rain, I'll probably be out again. All the best. Bye-bye.